And we're live. Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Brown, and welcome to the Discover Sensory Intelligence show, proudly brought to you by Sensory Intelligence. With me on the line, as you can see, is Dr. Anna-Marie Lombard, founder and CEO of Sensory Intelligence. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. Lovely to be here. Lovely to share the message with you and your listeners today.
And it's going to be an amazing message, guys. So please stick around to the end of this episode, which is called Mental Madness. It's part of a 3-part series that we're doing for Sensory Intelligence. So I'm super excited to be here. This is a very, very important conversation. So stick around to the end. We're going to give you something of value. So to kick us off, Anna-Marie, why don't you give us the elevator pitch? Like, who are you? And obviously the founder and CEO of Sensory Intelligence, but tell us the backstory to this.
Okay, Matt, firstly, the world is crazy currently. We are living in constant overload, distraction, and stress. And this does mean that a little bit we are struggling to get through our days as a human species. So if we understand your sensory wiring, which is really fundamentally how we are all made up, we can help you to actually be more focused, be calmer, be less overloaded, and then just literally get through your day easier. So that's in very short, the work that we do. So my background, I'm an occupational therapist. I've studied in health sciences. I've done my PhD studying sensory processing and how this impacts work performance in a call center of all places. So I've got 33 years of experience. I've done a lot of clinical work. That was the first part of my life, but the latter part of my life, really looking around, developing people, empowering people to just make their lives easier from a self-insight and a self-awareness point of view. So I've also written a book called Sensory Intelligence, Why It Matters More Than IQ and EQ. And it matters more than IQ and EQ, hierarchical of how it works in the brain. So that's just very shortly some introduction to me and who I am.
Fantastic. So in a nutshell, what exactly, when you say sensory intelligence, what do we need to know about that? What is it exactly?
Yeah. Firstly, we need to know about the process that we take you through as an assessment. So we first want to understand what is your sensory wiring. So we determine your sensory thresholds, and based on your sensory threshold, we can understand what is your level of stress or your level of overload with the way that you interact with your environment. So that's the key thing. The self-insight and the self-awareness is critical, because if we know what our stresses are, what distracts us, what overloads us, we can learn to reduce that in our lives. And if we know what works for your body and your brain through your environment, we can increase that. So after the assessment, we take you on a journey of training and coaching, and we work with individuals or groups, but it's really around a process of self-discovery. How are you wired? How do you interact with your world? And how does that impact your daily attention, emotion, and behavior? And if we think about it, attention, emotion, and behavior are the kind of 3 core functions that we all have to live with on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, and I would also add that the stress and anxiety of the average person today is a lot higher. I mean, obviously, pandemics don't help things. Monkeypox is now a new thing, but life in general is very stressful. So what is the role of stress and anxiety and these sorts of things in sensory intelligence?
Yeah, I think, Matt, if we want to backtrack a little bit about that, yes, we are post-pandemic, but I mean, post-pandemic, we just means we are now sitting with the after effects of COVID-19. And if we look at the stress stats that's out there, the World Health Organization has brought out stats that globally depression and anxiety has increased by 25%. Okay, 25%, that's a significant increase. We also know that mental health costs the world economy $2.6 trillion at the moment, and it's expected to rise to $6 trillion in 2030. So, and the one good thing about COVID is mental health has always been important, but it has kind of been stigmatized to a large extent, and people kind of steer away from it, which is so wrong. All of us have got a mental health wavelength that we all operate on. There are days where we struggle more. There are days where we feel more vulnerable. There are days when we are more irritable. That definitely impact our mental health state for all of us. So it's this continuum that we all are on. So the good thing about COVID is I think it has started to put a stronger emphasis on people, firstly, being aware of mental health, how important it is. And I think the key thing is what we need to do to attend to this, to be very personal in our approach and to actually help ourselves on a day-to-day basis to take our mental health seriously. Because, I mean, we are literally a breath away from that stats, and all of us have got capacity to fall into that stats. The wonderful thing about the work that we do is because it's all about you as an individual and you about your brain, your wiring, how you interact with your environment, what does your environment look like, how do your brain relate to this environment of you, we can actually use those insights and those principles and those tools to firstly create much better awareness for you. What do you need to avoid? What do you need to do differently? So it's about awareness and then changing habits, because we want to reduce stress. We want to reduce distractions. And if we can reduce stress and distractions, we'll have more energy, we'll be more focused, and we just get through our day easier. So, just quickly in a nutshell, very important to look at that.
So what I'm hearing is that the environment that we are in contributes to anxiety, depression, stress, all these kinds of things, and becoming self-aware around how these things like digital information, for instance, or digital overload, and your environment by extension is contributing to your mental health. So if we are becoming self-aware around our environment, you're saying that we can live better, healthier lives by discovering our sensory intelligence. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Matt. That's absolutely correct. Also, the other thing is we've got 7 senses, not just the 5 visible senses that we all know about. Seeing and hearing are the 2 visual senses. Then we've got touch, smell, and taste. They are our social senses, our chemical senses. And then we also have our movement senses. One is in your inner ear. It's called your vestibular system, your body's GPS, gives you feedback of where you are in space. And then we also have proprioception in your muscles and in your joints. Now, the reality is your environment gets processed through these 7 senses. So information reaches your brain through these channels. So it kind of works in the background unconsciously, consistently. We are bombarded with sensory information on a day-to-day basis, and all of us filter it slightly differently. And then obviously you mentioned digital fatigue, Matt. This is also the other after effect of COVID, hybrid working, digital working. By default, what is happening, we spend an awful amount of time behind our computers. So we're seeing, hearing, sitting, seeing, hearing, sitting, and more. Seeing, hearing, sitting. Now, what happens as a result? The brain doesn't have capacity to modulate and to regulate, because every time when you move your body, you move to a different environment, you look up, or you change your positioning, your body and your senses actually have got capacity to reset and to recharge. So by default, we are literally living in a digitally overloaded world. And look, we love home working. We love the fact that people now have more control over their work environment. But by default, it has created a huge amount of information overload and digital fatigue, which mean that even more so, we need to be very mindful of what can we do to our senses, our brain, and our bodies to be less tired, to have more energy, and to actually be more productive, obviously, as well.
And this is the new norm, right? It seems to me that there is a new norm that we're coming out of, this weird, isolated pandemic space, which, we all struggled with. And now things are opening up again, and we're entering into a new norm. There's hybrid work environments, right? Or policies. So for instance, I'm allowed to work from home, but some corporates are forcing people to go back, and some people are allowed to, work 3 days a week from home or have that flexibility. So how do we embrace the new post-pandemic norm?
Yeah. As I said, we love the fact that COVID has opened up the route of remote working, home working in particular. Matt, in 2008, when I launched our first tool after I did my call center research, already at that stage, I talked about home working for certain agents working in that particular space. For about 25% of the population, it would be better to work from home predominantly. Look, we can't work from home the whole time. We are social beings. We need to get out. We need to connect with other people. We are inherently social connectors. So I don't think it's healthy for anyone to work from home the whole time. But we definitely know for 25% of people, it would be better to work from home. They'll be more productive. They'll get more work done. They'll be healthier. They'll have less stress because their brains are more sensory sensitive, which does mean they overabsorb the environment. They traditionally and typically get very overloaded, distracted, and overwhelmed, for instance, in a busy open plan office space. The opposite is true for about 38% of the population. There's another group of people that thrive on activity, variety, people, input, different environments, sensation. So that group of people, we need to get back to the office as soon as possible because that will be a better workspace for them. Healthier, more productive, happier. And I think this whole thing, one size fits all approach is so yesterday. It doesn't really work at all anymore. And I want to say the old thinking of it's introversion and extroversion, that's also a little bit of an outdated model. We need to look at individual differences, at people differently, and how can we maximize people based on an environmental stimuli and based on their genetic coding. What we measure is that's your genes. You made up like this. You don't choose to be like this. You weren't something else yesterday and will be something else tomorrow. If we look at this theory, it's very constant. It's like part of your genetic makeup, and it is part and parcel of who we are for a continuation of time. We don't necessarily change that. So it's really looking at best fit from an environmental point of view. An environment gets measured by the senses. The brain perceives and processes the environment through our 7 senses. That's why they are so fundamentally important. Yet I think so basic and so simple. A lot of people would say, oh, this makes perfect sense. Now I know why I can't work in that particular coffee shop because, the coffee machines and the people chatting kind of drive me crazy. So if people can understand the nuances and the sensory irritation and needs that they have based on their genes, we can set up environments that are more conducive. And that is going to just give us more energy, keep us healthier, reduce our stress. So the environment really is key, but it's also quite simplistic in our approach.
Mm-hmm. So that's really great. And that's why the sensory matrix assessment is such an important thing. So just full disclosure, I've actually done the matrix assessment. So we'll get into the results in the next episode. So stick around for that. And as I mentioned right up front, we have a special offer for you guys today, and this is where you can get your own sensory matrix assessment done literally within 20 minutes. Is that correct? How long does it take to do this assessment, Anna-Marie?
15, Matt. If you do 20 minutes, you were overthinking it. So we usually encourage people to not overthink it. Go with your first gut because we are measuring your sensory responses. People always say, wow, no one have ever asked me, do I go over to flowers to smell them? Yes, we are actually trying to understand how do you inherently, subconsciously, unconsciously respond to sensory environment. For instance, who feel the seam of their sock inside their shoe? It's like, what? Do people even think about that? Yeah, some people actually, I'm constantly aware of the seam of my sock inside my shoe. I constantly have to cut out the labels at the back of my clothing because they irritate me. So we really want to determine what is your sensory thresholds. And if we understand your sensory thresholds, we can really learn a lot about your behavior and your habits.
Got it. So I'm going to bring this up now on screen for everybody. So this is where you need to go. You need to go to the Sensory Intelligence website. The actual link is learn.sensoryintelligence.com/sign up, and you will see this page. And this will basically then present you some more information about the process. But this is the offer for the show. So this is where you can go and buy one, get one free. So for individuals and for corporates, it's $59 per person. So if you and your wife or your husband or your son potentially, or someone in your network, you feel could benefit from becoming self-aware around, what environment is best suited for them from a stress and anxiety management perspective. And if you want the best outcome for these people that you care about, or just colleagues that you work with, this is an amazing process. So Anna-Marie, just at top level, it's individuals and for businesses. So what's the difference there?
Matt, we just try to be very fair on our working with individuals and working with teams or group. We work with both. So for any individual, and yes, it's perfect for couples that live together, or husband and wife, or partners, or child or brothers, or sibling, mum and child, to do this. But we actually have the same offer for corporate teams, because this is a phenomenal tool to work with corporate teams so that people can understand each other. Who would you send a WhatsApp message to versus just picking up the phone and calling them? So if we understand the sensory thresholds of our colleagues, it actually makes a big difference. And we want to actually just also provide the same benefit to corporate teams. So if you do a group, if you have a group of 100 people that you potentially want to take through the test, then you only need to buy 50, and then the other 50 we'll give for you for free. We really want this to be available to more people so that they can see the value and obviously experience and live the value. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And live a more fulfilled, happy work life.
We want to reduce that digital fatigue, have better work-life balance. It's important. And the solutions are frighteningly simple. They are really simple and they're easy to implement.
So there you go, guys. Go and get it now. It's learn.sensoryintelligence.com/sign up. It is up on the screen. We'll post a link up in the show notes as well. This offer is only available until the 15th of August. So do not wait. Go and get it now. I've done the assessment and we're going to be sharing my personal results with you. Anna-Marie's going to be walking me through the results. I haven't actually seen them. So it's going to be a learning process for me also. So my name is Matt, signing out, and we will see you in episode 2. Cheers.